Hi, Madhav. Welcome to the Appscrip podcast, and it's a pleasure to have you here. How are you feeling?
Good to be here. Great as always.
Okay, Madhav. So, in our Appscrip podcast, what we usually do is we invite experts and founders across different industries, and we sort of try to have a conversation with them where we kind of dive deep into their industry, their expertise, and if we can, extract some insight and values which would be helpful for our audience, which is mostly aspiring entrepreneurs. Right. So that's what we are intending to do through this podcast as well. So, Madhav, we'll try to like keep it as conversation and candid as possible. And so the very first question or the first sort of topic that I would like to start this podcast with is like you have been an entrepreneur for like what 7 8 years now, I think, right? So and you started way back in 2015. So how have been your entrepreneurial journey so far? Like before what you do right now as a founder of ZFW Dark Stores or Zippee, as we call it now. So before that, what were you doing, and how has been your journey like? If you can take us through that.
So we started off back in 2015 when I sort of graduated from school, getting into college. Started off with a small Chinese takeout store called Beijing Street. The first store did well for us. The second store, we with the success of the first store, we sort of launched the second store, and then store three and four. Graduated from college in 2018. Decided to scale up in this space. By 2020, we were doing a good eight-figure revenue. Then COVID impacted us, and already sort of we were building brands for about over 5 years. Having built brands and having sort of sat on that seat for almost 5 plus years, thought it now makes sense to help brands expand in these tough times, and sit on the enabler seat. That's when Zippy happened, formerly known as ZFW. That's when Zippy happened.
Right. So, like, what sort of triggered you to get into this enabling, sector or a logistics sector to be specific? Like, was there any potential kind of opportunity that you saw while running that Beijing street, or like, how was it?
So I think how it evolved was that we had four dark cloud kitchens, and we thought that we have a lot of idle space and capacity that can be used. Why not sort of extend this space, infrastructure, manpower, the entire idle resource set that we have, to help brands expand across markets and cities and zones. We partnered with Baskin Robbins being our first customer. We helped them scale up their dark store operations across different markets, and they still are one of our marquee customers today. And that's when we could do this with a bunch of ice cream brands and food brands is when we sort of scaled up the entire thesis to D2C consumer across other non F&B consumable categories. And today we deliver D2C brands and orders to customers in the very same day across markets, across five cities: Delhi, Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, and Hyderabad.
Okay, right. So, Madhav, when we hear about like stories such as when people have started up and they have scaled their company to a certain growth number and all of that, it sounds very fascinating. But if we talk about the starting point, so what are the key things that you need to have to start a logistics or an enabling business for e-commerce or retail stores? Like what are is the capital the main thing, or like how is it if someone doesn't have that initial capital or whatever, so how can that person go, like what's the initial the start, how to start that sort of a business, logistics?
I think in a logistics, warehousing, supply chain business, I think putting up one unit of the model, putting up a small prototype of the model, whether it's a dark store, whether it's a fleet in a very small city, right, is very important. Ensuring economics work out in city one or zone one or sort of prototype one is very important, because then that model can further be streamlined or replicated across other markets. Cut copy pasting the model across markets isn't that tough, but going pushing the gas on day one and scaling across markets and then having that entire learning curve or witnessing the learning curve is something that costs a lot of time, money and energy, and customers don't give a lot of chances. It's a supply chain business, right? It affects the end customer experience. So brands or users of the product don't give a very don't give multiple chances in this sort of an ecosystem.
Right. So Zippee started back when 2018 or 19?
Oh no, Zippy started in 2021. We've, yeah, we've just sort of completed 2 years.
2 years. So how has the growth been like since you have started?
I think crazy, more than we could manage. We scaled to 5 cities. We went from 1 to 100 customers. We went from a fleet of 3 to 4 riders all the way to now a fleet of about over 75 fleet members across markets, right? And that fleet is only growing month on month. So markets have been kind, but of course it's still day one, right? There's a there's a lot of expansion that is ahead of us right now in the next few quarters. So it's still day one for us.
Right. Interesting. So, Madhav, also, how competitive is this space? Like, if someone wants to start right now, is it very cluttered or already on the verge of saturation for like new companies to get in, or how is it? How does the market look like for logistics and same day delivery businesses?
I think there's never a market which is saturated, right? Evolution is always welcome in any market model ecosystem. So what we're solving is not something that was never solved for. I think for the longest years, the industry in which we're operating is the oldest industry, right? It's the industry in which sort of pigeons used to deliver letters, right? And then came companies, and then came fleet operators like Dunzo, Borzo, and then came sort of Zippy in a very small way in a very small market in India to do same day deliveries, right? So it's nothing new. It's just that we're reinventing the way people think of last mile delivery, people think of e-commerce fulfillment, people think of ordering from a website and getting it the very same day. It's just a newer way of doing things and a smarter way. What we would sort of choose to believe a smarter way of doing things.
Right, right. And Madhav, also this same day delivery business, what you are trying to enable with the the e-commerce or F&B businesses, is like which has like recently for the probably post COVID, it has sort of taken up that consumers and customers are like really aware of what's the delivery time is gonna be, and they want the product to be delivered to them as fast as possible, right? So, how important do you think today for the e-commerce brands or F&B businesses is this, to deliver their products to their end customers on the same day and not even delayed by a 2 day delivery or 3 day delivery is also like going to impact their business? Do you think so? How does that look like?
No, I feel Indian consumers are very value conscious and restless at the very same time, right? It's very important for a lot of categories to be close to customers and deliver orders to customers as soon as possible. I don't say same day delivery is a benchmark. Same day delivery is better than the previously delivered 2 to 3 day delivery timelines that e-commerce and D2C were delivering. We're trying to pull that down to a day, but larger players like the quick commerce players in the ecosystem have already gone down to 10 minutes with a very different model. Uh, we're yet to see how economics will pan out in the super quick commerce 10-20 minute delivery model, but we're very hopeful that the sensible piece of the cake here is the slower part of quick commerce, which we choose to believe is same day delivery, which is faster than e-commerce but slower than quick
Okay.
commerce.
And there are still a lot of businesses I see, especially who are probably their just first year or have been in the market for 1.5 years. Uh, there are a lot of business who are still kind of, especially, not so much the aggregator businesses, but people who are launching their own brands sort of and delivering through their websites. It's very hard for them to deliver their products to the customer very quickly. I see a lot of websites where they mention that the delivery is going to take you for
Easy,
like 6 to 8 days,
easy.
right?
Back in the day, it was 10 to 14 days, and then the time of 5 to 7 days, which you're mentioning 6 to 8, and then came down to 3 to 4. Uh, Before we entered market, it was 2 to 3. We immediately slashed that down by 70%, brought that to the same day with a cutoff in the day, at least in all metro markets. We're now into mini metros and slightly the premium tier one-ish cities, but we want to give this experience in metros and mini metros.
Right. So the thing is that a lot of businesses are still trying to figure that out, or probably unable to figure it out, or maybe it's not their priority on day one or in the initial phase of the business. How early in their business do you think they should prioritize the delivery day, or how much time it's going to take them to deliver the product to the customer?
I think it's step two in the business always, right? Step one is to achieve product market fit in a physical brand, like in a consumer brand. The product market fit is if the customers are liking the product, if they're coming back for the same product, the product has to click. That is the first priority. If the product clicks, for the customer to come back to you again, the service is to click. So delivery time, packaging, user communication, all of those pieces fall in step two, but are very important. They're not step three, four, five. They're not month six, seven, eight. They're month three, month four.
Right. And also, is it going to kind of from a cost point of view? I'm trying to understand this. For example, if an e-commerce brand is trying to deliver their product as quickly as possible, but is unable to do so, is also because the pricing goes up to deliver quicker, right? So, do you think that is the case, or is Zippy also solving for that? Is like the price is not going to impact that heavily to them for same day delivery?
So it depends on category to category, right? There are certain categories where our offering is not very conducive, such as quick snacking category, right? In the quick snacking category, two things. One, average order values are very low. Two, a lot of the users have been diverted to quick commerce platforms where they can choose to order one, two, three units of any product and don't have to end up ordering a bundle of four, six, eight, 12 of that one SKU, right? These brands more often than not sell bundles on their website to ensure AOVs are high and they can afford delivery, direct delivery to the customers. So, uh, but on the other side, beauty, wellness, compact electronics, pharma, these categories enjoy a very high average order value, and that is when they can afford a quicker express delivery model, even frozen meats, even frozen foods, all of these categories.
Okay. And how many dark stores you said you have right now under Zippy?
We have 170 dark stores. Uh, about 30 of them are large carpet. The remaining are micro fulfillment centers.
Okay. And how do you, or like I would like to know understand from a business point of view, like how does businesses when they have so many dark stores, in different cities, how do you manage and make sure that everything is supervised well, and it's managed well, and the whatever they are supposed to do and how they are supposed to operate, it is operated in such a way. How do you manage to kind of optimize for that?
There are operational blueprints. There are proper OKRs given to every team in the company, along with targets to improve OKRs and incentives if they end up improving their targets, right? So that's a system that flows top down within the organization. Weekly review calls to simplify it, right? To simplify what are the actionables, weekly review calls with every city team, with every regional team, with every business function, tech, product, SaaS, all of these teams. Um, and of course, very metric driven, very data driven approach. Which city is delivering a lower CPO, a lower cost per order? What month did it achieve that cost per order in? Which city is burning? Which city is already breaking even? Which city is delivering a good contribution margin? I think it's a very data driven plus blueprint driven approach.
Okay. Okay. And Mother, for example, if there's a brand who wants to tie up with Zippy for their delivery, right? So what's the process sort of looks like? Do they need to go on some sort of a is it a very digital enabling process, or do they need to contact someone in person in your sales team or something like that? How does the process look like?
Since this business engages with a lot of enterprise level brands, uh, onboarding happens in two ways, both inbound and outbound. A bunch of brands reach out to us on our website, fill up the form, give us their details, and then the partnerships team speaks to them. Alternatively, a lot of them reach out to us on LinkedIn via referrals. Investor referrals is a very big stream of inbounds for us. and so on and so forth.
Okay. And has there been sort of a role of a technology for your business to grow, or has it been a lot of manual effort only? Like, is there a bigger role of technology?
There's always a tech first approach, right? So first the process is built out on paper or on a whiteboard, and then that process is actually put onto an Excel, and then it's already put onto a Google Sheet, and eventually it becomes a process on our stack. It becomes a tab on our stack, a feature on our stack, right? So it goes on from becoming what do we need out of this process, what is the aim and agenda of this process. We define that process, we digitize that by putting it into on an Excel and then a Google Sheet, and eventually it becomes an integration between two tools on our stack.
And also, Madhav, I'd like to understand, like, when you talk about e-commerce brands and all of that, who you are enabling, so there's also a very very kind of very hot topic right now which is happening is about the funding winter, right? There's a funding winter for especially for e-commerce businesses and all of that. So has that impacted Zippy or logistics businesses at all because they are not getting enough funding?
Hasn't directly impacted Zippy. Uh, Fortunately, our rounds were subscribed uh, within the first 2 to 3 weeks of opening allocations. However, it indirectly affects us because a lot of our customers who don't end up raising, who are these venture-backed brands and don't end up raising, either have to reduce their marketing budgets or their performance marketing budgets, which reduces the order volume, which has a rippling effect on us, right? Um, so that's sort of the indirect effect on us of the entire funding winter in the ecosystem. But fortunately, till now, it hasn't had a direct impact on us. We're well capitalized for the next 2.5 odd years.
Right, right. And do you think, like, I would like to get your thoughts on this? That there has been, like, I was recently reading a LinkedIn post by probably some ex-partner in a VC firm. He was saying that, even though people are talking a lot about funding winter and all of that, but there are a lot of, if the value that you are, trying to put out, the value proposition of your business is right, there's still enough capital in the market for you. So do you agree to that? Do you think that value driven businesses still are okay with, raising funds and are pretty comfortable in the market?
100%. I think where there is a strong value proposition, value is being delivered to stakeholders in the business, um, as well as sensible economics, which are bound to improve with scale and time. So, value being delivered to customers and sensible economics with a very visual path to profitability in the near future with time and scale is something uh, that will always attract capital, and good deals will always have capital in the market.
Right. And also there has been a lot of debate around the topic, like, founders and especially, investor backed founders, ventures have been, focusing more on raising more funds rather than focusing on revenue growth or profitability. Do you think that is the case with a lot of businesses? And like, is there a right or wrong to it, or was that the need of the hour? What do you think?
A day in the life of a founder has a lot of North Star metrics, right? If you look at an OKR of a founder who's raised capital, he has pressure to deliver on MRRs, which is monthly revenues growing month on month. He has pressure to reduce his burns, to ensure and to sort of protect himself if either of these two don't work. If burn doesn't go down or if his MRR doesn't grow, he needs to raise capital. So all of this has to happen in parallel. There's no right wrong. It's about being at the right time at the right place and doing the right thing at the right time, right? But everything needs to happen in parallel. Burn needs to be controlled, revenue needs to be grown, capital needs to be raised, the company is well capitalized, and economics need to make sense. So all of this has to happen at the very same time.
So also, Zippy has also raised a lot of funding, right? I think there has been like a pre-seed and a seed round, right? A total somewhere I did some research, so it's around somewhere around 1.6 million dollars that Zippee has raised so far.
And another round that we've just raised, which we have not announced, we will be announcing soon.
Okay, so what do you think were your key strategies or something that has worked for you and Zippy that has sort of helped you not get into that rat race of becoming a unicorn faster and grow at any cost no matter what, and focusing more on the core business model and growing revenue and sustainably take your growth forward. So what are some of the probably key strategies that you think has worked well for you?
So one part of the day and one part of the week is when we're thinking how X revenue per month has to go to 1.5x in the next 3 to 4 months. The other part of the week, we're always thinking of in the next 6 months, the existing revenue has to be a burnless revenue where we're not burning a single dollar on that revenue that we're realizing. So I think, as I always say, a founder has three eyes, right? The first eye is a telescope, the second eye is a microscope, and the third eye is the eye of conviction. Microscope is very important to understand which customer or which contract is a burn contract, which city is burning a lot of dollars, what part of the business, what function of the business is burning capital. Telescopic view in terms of where do you see the business in the next 1, 2, 3 quarters, how have you sort of planned the entire expansion plan for the next 2 quarters, and of course the eye of conviction that yes, these two models, these two sort of sub models will work, or this is the strategy to grow. So all of this has to happen in parallel. So there are different times set for us to work on burn control, and there are different times set for us to work on expansion, and they're all there in the very same week every week.
Interesting, interesting. So, Madhav, I'd like to now go a little towards the e-commerce and business side of it. Like you work with a lot of e-commerce businesses, right? And nowadays, we see a lot of people, just starting an e-commerce brand because it looks very fancy, right? A lot of people just for the sake of it do that. And what would you advise to someone who is probably getting into the e-commerce space right now, be it in India or probably somewhere else in the world, about how to go about it and what are the things to do, and more than that, what are the things that they should not do while starting an e-commerce brand?
I think two very important things. One, to have a consumer brand operate in India or an e-commerce business operate in India. I'll redefine your question. Uh, I'll first talk about a consumer brand which has an e-commerce approach, right? There are no e-commerce businesses for consumer brands who have an e-commerce uh, channel. E-commerce just is one of the channels of revenue. It cannot be a D2C brand. D2C is a channel, not a brand, right? It's a consumer brand having D2C as one of its channels. In a country like India, a brand needs to have a very strong omni-channel approach for it to scale beyond a certain point. You can scale with one or two channels in the first few quarters or years of expansion, but as you scale up from 10 to 100, you need to strongly adopt an omni-channel approach. That's point number one. Point number two, or I'd say minus one, if you step back, is to understand your customer very well. Brands always look at products from their own lens. They don't understand A, who's the customer, B, how does the customer think, C, what is the consumption pattern, D, what is the consumption occasion, and so on and so forth. There needs to be a lot of time spent to understand the customer. When does he purchase, what does he purchase, where does he purchase, how important of a purchase is this product for him in his entire day, how engaging is the product, is it a high intent product or a low intent product, what are the touch points in that in the sort of potential customers day. So that is something where I think brands need to focus a lot, identifying the customer, and yeah, and of course, omni-channel approach. So both these points are very important.
Right, absolutely makes sense. So, Madhav, you said your first customer on Zippy was Baskin Robbins, right? As you mentioned. So, Baskin Robbins being such a big brand, like how did you get them on board, your first customer, and how difficult was it?
I reached out to the leadership on LinkedIn, After 3 months, I got a response, scheduled a call, closed that customer. Uh, that day and today, Baskin Robbins has still been operating with us and scaling with us. And of course, 100 brands after that are also part of the portfolio, but that being the first brand.
Yeah, but when you're just starting out, right? You have no proof that you'll be able to deliver it with all that efficiency, and there won't be any problem, no issues. You don't have testimonials to show. So how do you convince them, to getting on a call and to close them? That gap in between is the most difficult part, I think. How do you do that?
If you solve a problem or if you plan to solve a problem, convincing uh, a challenged customer is not very is not a big challenge. If they're already facing a challenge of scale, if they're already facing a challenge in the middle of COVID, in the middle of the first wave of COVID, parlors are shut, revenues have taken a big cut, and that's when I approached them and I said, okay, I have dark stores. All you have to do is place your ice cream. We will activate all channels, all food commerce channels. As and when orders come, we will pick, pack, dispatch, and deliver them to the customers. They saw a huge opportunity. They signed up with us. We did the first few stores. It worked for them. We scaled that business up with them. They have another low calorie ice cream brand as well. We scaled that up as well, and we still continue to work with them. 3 months ago, we signed their third brand, which is a plant based frozen food brand. So I think identifying the problem faced by the ecosystem and sort of hitting the nail at the right places at the right time is very important.
No, no, of course, great. That's, I'm sure, something, every new founder or an entrepreneur getting their first customer on board is the most critical part of their business. And that sort of also gives them validation and confidence about their business. And yes, they can take it forward. So, of course, I think that would be something that would give a lot of value and insight to our audience. And also, Madhav, let's talk a little bit about quick commerce businesses such as Zepto and Blinkit and all of that. When they first came into the business, there was this first phase where people were like going crazy. Oh, see, there's like 10-minute, 15-minute delivery coming into our house, and it's like great. And few weeks or few months down the line, probably they started to completely hate it that we don't need 10-minute delivery, or you are risking the driver and all of that. A lot of rumors kind of surfaced. So, and there's also been a lot of debate around it in the startup ecosystem and the investment, the VC firms and all of that. So there has been a lot of question on their business models, that probably they are not running their business with the right model, and probably they are not focusing on the right things. Do you agree to it, and what is your take on those businesses which are trying to deliver in 10 to 15 minutes probably?
You mentioned 3 points. Point number one, you mentioned customers loved it. Point number two, you mentioned it. Customers, after 3 months, mentioned that it's not a very good model because riders are at risk. Uh, Point number three, you mentioned startup ecosystem isn't very happy with it because of the model. I'll comment on all the points. Point number one, customers love it. As I mentioned at the start of the call, Indian consumers are very value conscious and restless, both at the same time. Point number two, you mentioned that there was a lot of hate around the quick commerce model because people suspected that riders are at risk because of a 10-20 minute delivery. Um, that's not how it works. Riders are at no risk. Delivery happens faster because products are placed near customers. Dark stores are placed 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers within urban density. Riders are not flying at 500 kilometers an hour. It's just that picking, packing of that order takes a minute and a half, and the rider has a good 6 to 8 minutes to deliver the order within the vicinity. That's on point number two. Point number three, I totally agree. Grocery businesses in India are very hard to crack for one reason that people purchase in small batches. People don't do weekend shopping. People like to purchase every second day. Basket sizes are small. When basket sizes are small, margins don't change. ITC, Godrej, all the larger consumer companies giving margins to shopkeepers are the same margins that they're going to be giving to any other quick commerce e-commerce platform, right? Margins don't change. But your cost structures within those margins are mm, are exponentially higher because you have a rider picking, packing, uh, delivering those orders, right? So economics is a very big challenge, at least according to us, in the very super fast 10-20 minute delivery model. That's my thought on it.
Right, right. And do you think the questions that are being raised about the business model, as you rightly mentioned, like these are probably the things that needs to be focused on for such businesses, that whether, because the ticket sizes are really small and they can't do much about it because the business is such, right? So what do you think, to kind of scale their business or to grow, and to how does their future look like? And would you give some advice on, like, how can they probably course correct if that is required in some reason? Would you like to share some insights on that, probably?
I think increasing tats from 10 to 30 minutes or 45 minutes or maybe an hour, delight doesn't incrementally grow when the tat reduces from a 30-minute to a 10-minute. So that's point number one. And point number two is going category agnostic into sub impulse categories like very compact electronics such as chargers, um, and other categories which are not groceries, fruits, vegetables, fresh categories, but are sub impulse categories. That will help in increasing the basket size, hence increasing the margin per order, and hence making it a more stable model in terms of economics.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. Okay, Madhav. So we are almost at the end of our podcast. So I'd just like to ask you one more thing. Like, as a founder who has been in the market for like probably 7 years and more than that, to people who are just starting out, be it in the e-commerce, quick commerce, or logistics space, would you like to share something that you have learned from your journey as a founder, and something that you have learned, and you think that probably if these are if I've I could have known these things early on in my career as a founder, I could have done better with the businesses that I've worked on. So if you can share some insights for the founders who are kind of trying to step into the market now.
Two, three things very clearly. One, founders need to stay very organized. Founders end up taking a lot of dump on themselves, which they're not supposed to be doing. They need to be very good at delegating a lot of tasks to teams and sort of empowering the teams to perform. Secondly, I advise founders to start very early. Starting early, failing early is very important and is part of the process. Does not involve a lot of unlearning if you start early. And I think point number three is knowing your customer very well. First, delivering value to the customer and not starting day one on designing pitch decks. These days, I think the flavor of the last few years has been that people starting businesses first design pitch decks, not products. Right? You need to first design the product, see what value it delivers, and then later on get to capital.
Okay, Madhav. So that's it. I think our conversation probably would have given some good insights and value to the aspiring entrepreneurs, and also someone who has probably just ventured into the business world, and probably just started off with their business. So I think they would get some good insights and value out of it. I hope you had a good time in this podcast, because I surely did. So would you like to say something on that?
Had a lovely time. It was very enjoyable. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Madhav. It was great to have you. Thanks again.